Hello, Jake. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I'd like to begin our conversation with just asking you to explain in your own way what you mean by psionics.
For sure. Yeah, psionics, it's kind of a fun word. What do I mean by psionics? Well, I can share what my understanding of it is. Psionics, I think, let me back up and say that, I didn't get into this world of psionics or consciousness, through the front door, let's say. It wasn't something I was pursuing or that I had a background in educationally. I came in through a window, if you follow me with that analogy. And so I took an interest in it because of my own experience that happened at a very unexpected time in my life. But um, since then is when I've really began to explore what that really does mean. And I'm excited to share that with others. And my message is one of invitation, not education. I'm not here to insist or sell people on the idea they should take my interpretation of my experiences and my subsequent um, education through the pursuit of knowledge of and personal understanding of what it means. But I want to invite everyone to get out there and play with this thing, because what's beautiful is that it's available to everyone. And one of the analogies that's helped me look at this is the idea of the World Wide Web. Like, if you think of consciousness as the World Wide Web, and the degree to which we can play within that field of consciousness is something like psionics, then I think you're on a good track. And it might not. I've thought about this recently. It might not even be an analogy. It might like literally be a form of digital intelligence or digital consciousness that the World Wide Web might be evolving into. That's yet to be determined. But you know, why is this hard to understand, or why is it abstract for people? Again, this is where I think analogies are helpful. So if you think of a field of consciousness like the internet, it's around us all the time. It's full of information. It's a two-way thing. People contribute. You can upload to it. You could download from it, but you can't see it. Like, I couldn't point to it here in this room. And so our ability to connect to that World Wide Web is done through something like a Wi-Fi connection. And I think some of the challenges, even with the practical applications of that, are rooted in our own ego. You could think of our ego like a smartphone. Let's say you have the latest version of the Apple smartphone, and you're like, this is the smartest phone there is. It's got all these widgets on it. It's got this much gigabyte. It's got this fancy of a camera. But for some reason, you're still not able to use it to tap into the field of consciousness. Well, I would say that that's because you're in airplane mode. And so people need to learn how to activate the Wi-Fi on their cell phone to tap into this field of consciousness. Um, so, you know, it also helps for me to think about, the difference between our intelligence, our knowledge, our wisdom, and then our intuition. So intuition is a word that we find ourselves using a lot when we talk about consciousness. And why I think that is because intuition is a little bit different than the first three. Someone with good intuition, or a high level of knowledge, or a high level of intelligence, or a high level of wisdom, you would probably in general say, hey, those are smart people. Like, what makes people smart? Like the smartphone. And I think it's important to kind of differentiate between those four. And this is what I have done that has helped me out a lot. When you think of knowledge, let's just say, is like rote information. You have the ability to retain and share knowledge. Like, you could go on Jeopardy and clear all the categories on Jeopardy. That's rote knowledge. But the practical application of that knowledge is something different. So that moves us more into like, well, you're smart, but you're not very intelligent. Is that possible? Perhaps, because I look at intelligence more as like a set of problem solving skills. You can solve problems. And then the other category over here, wisdom. Well, what is wisdom, and how is that different than knowledge and intelligence? Well, wisdom to me seems to be something like the ability to make good decisions, fruitful decisions. And then lastly, well, intuition. How would you differentiate intuition? And intuition is something like being able to make the right decision at the right time. And it's something like this internal bell. It's how I think of it, that can ring true inside of your being. And when something rings true, there's really no explanation as to why you're attracted or oriented to it, but it's leading you a certain way. And so I feel every human has this bell that can ring true inside of them, and that's your intuition, and it can drive decision making. So, to pull this back to, what is psionics? I think psionics is our ability to play within the consciousness field
Mhm.
for desired outcomes rather than just connect to it. So again, to stick with this analogy, the World Wide Web, imagine, okay, you figured this out, you've connected to the field of consciousness, and I'll talk about how, crudely, how I understand to do that and what's been successful for me so that other people can try this on their own. But imagine you're connected and you get a Google search bar. You have to put something in that search bar. You're connected, but you
Mhm.
have to have
Mhm.
some intention. And intention is a really important thing because you, without intention, you have no driving force. And if we consider that maybe every living thing in the universe has access to this consciousness field, you need to bring intention in order to find what you're looking for. So you have to populate that search bar with something. Um, and so bringing some good intentions, what you consider good, which at the most fundamental level, without getting to angels and demons on you, is just to go there with the intent that it's going to be worthwhile and you're going to find something that is worthwhile to you. And I think finding that space is really important if you're going to try and connect to the field of consciousness. Um, there's several ways to do it. I mean, meditation comes up a lot in conversation. You can meditate. Um, and for me, it's like, well, what does meditation look like? How do we find our own consciousness? How do we separate from our observer point of view inside our own head when thoughts are coming in, where they're coming from? Is this my intellect? Is this my knowledge system? Is this my wisdom? Is this something that's inside my head that can be tracked? Or is this something that's coming from an external source? And this is where I find meditation is so valuable, because meditation could be thought of as something like creating a defensible space in your mind that is like blacked out, where you are quieting, or you're at least starting by observing your own thoughts and then trying to source the origin of those thoughts. Because we all have thoughts. Some of the most easy sources to identify are things that are consistent with our instincts, like, am I thinking about food? Well, I'm hungry. Am I thinking about food? Survival? Am I thinking about procreation, defending myself? Those are all thoughts that will probably populate our head, from the limbic portion of our brain. Then we have other thoughts, which are like intelligent thoughts, are these things we have learned that fascinate us, that puzzles we like solving. That's our intelligence at play, and we can source those. But when you get really good at creating this defensible space and being able to identify thoughts and push away thoughts that you can identify as coming from some internal origin, what gets really interesting is that you'll begin to have thoughts or ideas that you can't source the outcome from. And I believe those are coming um, from a through a conduit of intuition. And when you're applying that intuition, that connection, I think you're in the purest form of Wi-Fi connection to the consciousness field, which is where exciting things start to happen, if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, then that's the realm of remote viewing, remote perception, for example, that with
Yes.
intent, one can see objects hidden, under a pillow in another room or on the other side of the world. So this is very important because you're
Estas tierras ahora pertenecen a la raya.
identifying psionics as the relationship between us and this larger field of consciousness and our ability to align with it and enter it and go places
And go
and
places.
interact with beings like extraterrestrials, NHI, that communicate through mental telepathy, and they're fluent in the language of consciousness.
They are.
And we have to become fluent in the language of consciousness in order to engage in intelligible communication. And so
Yeah,
that's
that's
the realm
just
of
it.
psionics.
Yeah, I like the idea of fluency being something there. I think too about, we've been sending RF and radar signals out into the universe for decades now, and we're waiting for something to reply back in that language. An RF signal, it's like, the search for SETI, the search for extraterrestrial
Intelligence.
uh, intelligence. Thank you. But we're speaking that language. I think it might be the case that they've been transmitting to us through consciousness, but again, we're not listening to that signal as often. Or there have been times throughout history where we have, but the technology has been lost. And that technology is a soft tissued spiritual form of technology because it's in there. And that's the reason I encourage everyone to, because you can figure this out on your own really quickly just by practicing it. And there are people out there that are inherently better at this than others, just like some people are better at anything, take to music more naturally. Some people are more athletic. There are some people that have this bell inside of them that rings true. And I think they could have even more success than me or any other person if they have that predisposition. There's only one way to find out is you go there and practice
Exactly.
something with prayer or meditation, and you're going to be surprised at what you find.
Yeah, and as Skywatcher, your company, you employ remote viewers and make a very sophisticated application of psionics in your
Yes.
interactions with the non-human intelligences that are out there. And if I
Yeah.
understand it correctly from your various interviews, your team is capable of actually not only communicating but drawing them down in a mutually intentional way.
Yes. Yeah. And so to explain how that works, I'll go back to the idea of we've accessed the World Wide Web and the search bar pops up. Through the process, you can request with your intent. Think of it as typing in, I would like to meet you, NHI, whoever you are, and you put that intention, you put that in your search bar of your consciousness web browser. And guess what? It populates, the search field populates, and you get messages, but you can also get tangible things to show up. You can get things to show up that people that aren't necessarily involved with your psionic protocol to actually see the response that you're getting, which is really exciting.
Jake, I wish we could go much more deeply into this, but this has been enough for now. You've helped us to start the conversation, and we'll take it from here, and really appreciate your courage, my friend, and your clarity in the way you've articulated the new frontier of UAP disclosure. You've done an extraordinary service on behalf of all of us in taking the conversation forward, so we appreciate it.
Well, you're more than welcome, and I appreciate the company because it's a lonely space that I hope doesn't stay lonely for long. So I appreciate your fellowship here. Thank you.
Thank you.